On perfect square trinomial. Several of you asked me, this came up on your work yesterday and the day before, and several of you couldn't remember. So let's review on what a perfect square trinomial is and why it's important. If I have, first of all, what's a trinomial? 3 terms, right? With a perfect square trinomial, the terms on the ends are both perfect squares, right? And that middle term, okay, if you take the square roots of the ends, so what's the square root of the first one? X. What's the square root of the last one? 5. If you multiply those together and double them, it should give you what sits in the middle. Okay? The second sign has to be a plus. The ends have to be perfect squares. The square roots multiplied and double give you what's in the middle. If that happens, it's an easy factor. Because you take the square root of the first, you take the first sign, and you do the square root of the last squared. Do y'all remember this? And so that's a perfect square trinomial. Now, why are these important? These are important because they set us up for an easy solve if we're solving. Remember we talked about solving a lot the first half of chapter 1. And then in the second half we talked about when we have that I while we're solving and how we go SAD map to solve, right? You're remembering that a little bit? So if I have something that looks like this, okay? This on the left is like a perfect square trinomial that's already been factored for me. How could you solve that? What do you do? SAD map, so what do you do?
You square root it.
You square root it first, because inside the parentheses is last. So I would square root both sides, right? All right, your SAD map over here. Parentheses being last. This makes these go away. And I have x plus 3 equals square root of 8. The square root of 8, though, what do I do with it?
You just leave it like that.
What'd you say? That's exactly right. Square root of 2 times square root of 4, square root of 4 times square root of 2. I break it down into 2 things multiplied, one of them being a perfect square. Remember this when we simplified those radicals? Okay, so this becomes, and don't forget that plus or minus 2 root 2. Yes? Does that make sense? Now I move the 3. So it's just plus or minus 2 root 2 minus 3. Nothing new. This came from previous chapter, previous sections, okay? But what we're going to do is we're going to take an equation and we're going to force it to look like this so that we can solve it this way. So it's what we call completing the square. I think I will give you this. Pause this. I want you to take a look at this with me for a minute. Actually, no. In order for that to be a perfect square trinomial, what number would you have to put in the blank? What is it? Why? 6 is half of 12. If this were a 36, square root of this is x, square root of this would be 6, multiplied together and doubled would give you 36. How would that factor? Square root of the first sign, square root of the last squared. This is the hardest part about completing the square. We're completing the equation to make it a perfect square. Let me show you another one and then I'll give you the little formula for it. What if it were what goes in the blank that would make it a perfect square trinomial?
81.
81. What are you doing? You're doing it in your head, but if you had to tell somebody a general formula for finding this C value, do you remember this is A, this is B, and this is C, what would you tell them to do? To find C, what are you doing? What are you dividing? B by 2, multiply by itself or square it. That's exactly what you do, and that's exactly the formula for finding the C that makes it a perfect square trinomial. You take half of the middle and you square it and put it on the end. How then does that factor?
X plus 9.
Close. X minus 9 squared, because you always pull this first sign. Okay? Y'all following me so far? I'm trying baby steps because this. Now, the one that's on here is a little bit harder because most of the time you're not going to have a leading coefficient like this one does, but you may encounter it once or twice, so I'd rather show it to you now.
Once written on here?
I'm doing this one here. You can do the next example on that paper. Or if it helps you to write it down instead of just following here, then sure, write it down. But you can, yeah, that's your paper. It doesn't matter what you write down. All right, so the first step is to divide everything by A. We got to make sure A equals 1. We can't have a number in front whenever we complete the square. Okay? Remember the goal of this, we're solving. We want to know what X equals. Okay? All right, and we cannot factor this, by the way, because if you multiplied A and C, there would not be two things. Oh, I need to go to another page so I have room. So this would be a cannot be factored problem anyway. All right, I'm going to divide everything by 3. So I get x squared minus 10x plus 9, and of course 0 divided by 3 is still 0. Right?
Why'd you divide everything by 3?
Because when you complete the square, you can't have a number in front. That's the first rule. No number in front. I'm right here on your steps, okay? So make sure you don't have an A when you start, first step. Second step, check to see if you have a perfect square trinomial. So look at this one. Remember the things that make it perfect square trinomial. Second sign is a plus. That works. The two ends are perfect squares. That works. But does the square root of this times the square root of that together double give you what's in the middle?
No.
No. That tells me that's a bad C. Okay? It doesn't work. If it doesn't work, I need to get rid of it. Now, in an equation, we can't just get rid of anything, right? So what do we do? Minus it. I'm going to move it to the other side where I don't have to deal with it right now. Now, when I do that, I now have x squared minus 10x. I'm going to leave a little space right here because I told you that was a bad C. If that's a bad C, I want to find a good C, okay? The negative 9 is on this side, but if I'm going to add something here, I'm going to have to add it to the other side because it's an equation. So I'm going to put myself 2 little blanks as a reminder that whatever I do here, I have to do here, okay? So, we are on now step 4. And y'all figured this formula out right on your own. If I want this to be a perfect square trinomial, what number needs to go in the blank? 25. Because half of 10 is 5, and 5 squared is 25. So I need to put it here, and I need to put it here. Same thing we did at the beginning. I'm just making it look a certain way. Does that make sense? This is the side I'm worried about right now. Anything I don't want, this trash or garbage, I'm putting on the right side, and I'll deal with that in a minute. Okay. Tell me then, on the left side, how does that factor? In other words, this one,
X minus 5 squared.
what do I have on the right side?
Equals -9.
What's -9 plus 25? Does this look like something you can solve now? Yeah. What would you do? Square root, same as we did before. It's gone on the left. I have x minus 5 equals, what's the square root of 16? 4. I'm going to do the plus or minus. Okay. And now you're right, John, plus the 5. So this is giving me two answers because that's a perfect square. It's saying that x could be 5 plus 4, which is 9, or x could be 5 minus 4, which is 1. You said that's it. You think it's easy? That's what plus or minus means. Plus or minus means plus
We have to,
or minus.
Do we have to write it out like that?
If it's whole numbers, I'd like you to recognize that because of what we're getting to later. But if this were like square root
Why
of
did
3,
not?
you would just leave it. All right, so let's do one without the steps, start to finish, and see what happens. Y'all think it's hard? No?
So that's
Okay,
it
that's
for
fine.
today?
Type it down. Walk me through it. Tell me what I do first. Divide everything by 2. Remember, you're not going to have that every time, but if you see it, do it. Okay? So everybody's got a 2 I need to get rid of. On the left, I have, what you tell me, what do I have? X squared, 4x, and close, 7. My directions say solve by completing the square. Subtract 7. Why are you subtracting 7? It's a bad C. It doesn't make it be a perfect square trinomial, so I need to move it. Now, when you do it, remember, if that's a bad C, I need a good one. So I'm going to leave some space to add a good one on both sides. So now the question is, what's a good one? Bless you. About 30, no. Not 30. What are you doing? Tell me what you're doing. How do you find what a good one really is? You're right. Divide what by 2? 4. Take the middle number, divide it by 2, and then square it, because remember the ends have got to be perfect squares.
That's 4.
So that's 4. That's right. That needs to go in this blank and in this blank. Okay? The left side. What do I do with it?
Factor.
Factor it. What does it look like factored? X plus 2 squared. Square root of the first is x. The square root of the last is 2. Okay? What does it equal now? -3. Am I going too fast? Okay. Little? Okay. All right, so I got rid of my A. I moved the bad C. I found a good C. I added the good C to both sides, and now I factored. What's my last step? Solve it. Stat math it. Square root it first. That's exactly right. If I square root, why am I saying It's negative. What happens with the negative? Y'all got this. There's an I. That means x plus 2 is plus or minus I times the square root of 3. Can I break down the square root of 3? No. 3 is a prime number, nothing's going to go to that but 1. It's still not solved for x though. What's still hooked to x? 2. So I need 2. Move it. I can't combine it with this. So I just write, and you can do, it doesn't matter which one comes first. You can do it this way, or you could do plus or minus I root 3 minus 2. It doesn't matter. But that's it. Yes, ma'am. The square root of 4 here. It's the square root of both ends. So this is the square root of the first number, and this is the square root of the third number. Other questions? No, it could be plus or minus I root 3 minus 2 if you wanted to. Either way is fine. Y'all keep saying that. Y'all are worrying me. Yeah, I mean, that's it. No, yeah, I mean, that's... You want me to do another example? Let me do one more. Let me do one more. It's not going to hurt anybody to see one more. How about if I do one from your classwork?
Oh, see, it's not the concept. It's not the concept. I'm talking about me.
Yeah, do the last one.
Oh, like is that? I got you. The last one, because you know the last one's always the hardest. Okay.
What number's the last one? So I can write it on my paper.
32. This is number 32 from your assignment. Yes, exactly. So the way your homework is set up is there's very few that take you all the way through. Like the first set is what's the good C here? And all you do is find the good C for all those. And then if it looks like this, what would it look like factor it with the good C? And then there's only a few that walk you through all the way through. Kind of like what I showed you, like the first thing I showed you, there's a set of those. And then the second thing I showed you where you found the different, there's a set of those. And then there's a set of those. All right. So somebody said divide everything by 7, and that is absolutely 100% correct. Now remember, I want to see your work. I don't care about the answer. I care about your work. So the steps that I'm showing are the steps I want you to show. All right, good C, bad C. Bad C. Bad. Is 8's not a perfect square, right? So move it. All right, when I move it, I need to subtract. I need to hold the spot here because if that was a bad C, I'm going to need to find a good C. This is very similar to the one we just did, isn't it? Sit straight up. Who's got the good C? is it? 4. Half of 4, take half of the number in the middle and then square it. So 2 squared is 4. Is that you okay? You follow me? Okay. You look confused for a second. All right. 4 is my good C. Both sides. Yes? Here. Here. Left side factors how? -8 plus 4 is? It's always, you're always going to add it. 4. Negative, oh, this side, yes, I'm sorry, Aaron. Yes, yes, yes. -4. Now what? What's wrong?
Isn't that supposed to be a negative?
What's supposed to be -4? What y'all looking at?
C equals 4 divided by 2 squared equals 2 squared. Oh, never mind.
-8 plus 4 is negative.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is everybody with me? I don't want to go on if everybody's not with me. Now I'm ready to solve. What do I do?
Square root.
Square root. What? She was ready. What is the square root of -4? What is it? 2i. So I said 2i. Was that you, Samantha?
No.
Plus or minus 2i. X is not by itself. What's still hooked to it? 2. So to get rid of a plus 2, I do minus 2. Yes, no, maybe so. I keep hearing.